So, Meena ma'am, I've been stalking you for the purpose of this podcast only, and I noticed that you travel a lot. What has been your favorite destination to travel so far? Any traveling stories that we can hear from you?
So I think as a person, I love traveling. I mean, I think most of us do. But when you learn to travel, it's a different thing altogether, right? So my early experience of traveling on work was way back in 2006, 7, when we had gone on a immersion through my previous employer to UK. And it really was the best learning experience because India was also growing in the education space. So you're adopting some of the best practices. And while you do know that we have adapted and adopted the British curriculum or the British way of, the system of how our education 10 plus 2 plus 3 exists. And then to go there and learn about curriculum, how to make more creative curriculum, going through workshops with that. And when you do this with like-minded people who are your colleagues also in a different place, I think we've had some great experiences both in the class and off the class.
So, traveling has been more of a work thing than a leisure thing?
No, I make sure that I travel for myself as well. But very early, my mentor, Dr. Shahani, had told me this, that when your vocation becomes your vacation, you will enjoy every single day of work. And that has been true. It's been 2 decades and counting as an educator. And truly, my vocation is a vacation every single day.
What's like your dream destination?
For work?
For travel?
For travel? Okay. Currently on my list is Australia. I haven't been there. So I'm looking at exploring that sometime soon.
Can we talk about your academic qualifications, like your school life, your college life? How did you start working over here and everything?
You plan to show up my age?
16, 17?
25.
25.
Please
25.
just stick to that, yeah. So I'm a Bombay girl and I still refer to myself as a Bombay girl because I was born in that generation when we were still Bombay. So yes, I'm a Bombay girl and I went to school at Worli. It's called Green Lawn School, Worli. And a small school, very unlike, I think, most schools that you all have been through, which are large and, which have many divisions.
What board was it?
ICSC. And a cohesive learning environment started from there. And then after my ICSC, I moved on to HR College, which was by then very popular for its commerce-based education. So I did my 11th and 12th HSC from there. And then I completed my BCom from HR as well. I'm an accounting and finance major in BCom, but I did nothing related to that. Somewhere midway through my 3rd year in BCom, I discovered that I loved human resources. And that's where my passion for HR and HRM went through. And I'm an alum of NMIMS, so I've done my master's from there. And thereafter, I also did my master's on a scholarship at the University of Westminster in London, which is also a master's in HRM. So yeah, that's been my academic journey. Currently, I'm on the cusp of completing my PhD. So I am pursuing my PhD in CSR. So fingers crossed, hopefully that comes through soon as well.
Education back then and education right now, what is the difference you see?
So obviously when I was studying, it was purely rote-based learning and marks defined you, whether socially or in your academic space. So it was about the percentage that you had got, and every % really, really made a difference. And that would initially be the make or break for you to even get into college, right? So that was something that was different. When we moved into masters, even in India, we had then gotten into this whole case study based approach of learning. So NMIMS and similar business schools had got the knack of delivering their MBAs through that mode of learning. But now when I see it, and I think that was what really even got me to move from traditional teaching, which was at HR in the unaided programs there, to ISME, which was the private institution that Dr. Shani launched in 2016, because you were going to deliver it really differently, which was project-based or experiential-based learning. And that was a mega kick in my life.
More of a practical approach.
Absolutely. And that's what works, right?
That's best for students also, because theory takes you somewhere. Practical learning is actually what you're going to do, what's happening around you, what's happening in the world.
And I'm just going to add that, look, why? Because it's your generation which loves practical learning, and you all really are using that buzzword a lot. Conceptual knowledge is very important. So you cannot do away with some of the traditional aspects of learning or teaching or the conceptual knowledge that is required. Then the important thing is, which is what you all enjoy, is the application of it. And that's what makes your learning experience, more doable, or, something that you all enjoy. But if you cannot do it without the conceptual knowledge. So I'm a firm believer of that.
Conceptual knowledge is good for creating a base from where we find these applications.
Absolutely. Yeah.
How did you get into teaching? Like, has this always been because when I look at you, I'm like, okay, like she must have been 5 years old and she decided, okay, I'll become a teacher only when I grow up.
So, I don't know how is it in your generation, but when we were younger, anyone who asked us, so we only wanted to be a doctor or an air hostess or a pilot or a teacher. Like, these are the only occupations that we knew. And of course, I always used to play teacher, but I never wanted to be a teacher, okay, or anywhere closely related to education. I have always stated this, that I got into this completely by default, or it was destined. I was in between my MCOM examinations, and you have that little bit of time when you figure out what you want to do next after the part 2 of MCOM gets done. And I was right there, and I thought I will pick up a job in any multinational or a corporate space in the human resource department, and that was always my dream. But there was a short-term vacancy at HR college, and we all know Dr. Shani. You can't say no to her. And I always say this, that she's instrumental in where I am today, because it was a short 3-month stint which has become 2 decades and counting.
Where does the word Meena Ma come from? Is there a story behind this or something?
Oh, you should ask your alum. So I have always been particular about certain things, right? And I think you all have seen that,
Yes.
whether it is just basic decorum in the classroom, the discipline and things like that. And so when it starts out, I'm always that Meena ma'am, which people, I believe, are wary of. But when they start working with me on, projects, or I always teach, right? So I always teach 1 year of the batch in a 3-year program. Generally, it's the 3rd year. So it's in the 3rd year when I think the ice gets broken. And I actually feel very wonderful and grateful that I get these opportunities to mentor you all, share your stories, your struggles, your highs and lows. And don't you do that with your mother? So I think that's where the mark comes with. But honest to God, I think, those are just blessings from you students, and who also consider me as that ma in college. So yeah, I feel very, very grateful.
How has it been working with Indu ma'am?
Phenomenal. I am what I am because of Dr. Indu Shahani. She's taught me while I was in college. Then she's taught me every single way that I've worked with her. I haven't left her for 25 years. So 20 plus years of working, and the 5 years that I was her student. So it's a very long association, and I don't think I would be here where I am, in whatever way I'm able to contribute without the learnings and the mentorship that she has provided me every single day.
What do you think is the reason behind her success?
She is the most human-centric individual you'll ever come across. So selfless. It's always student first. And I think you all see that in college, in the university as well. But having known her for so many years, it's always about the other person. And I think that when some of us have worked with her, we've learned that very closely too, that always put yourself in the other person's shoes and then try and solve the problem. And I think that's one of her best and most enduring qualities. Of course, there are many more. She's a visionary. She's very dynamic. She has the most amazing amount of energy that you can ever find at any time of the day. So there's a lot that's with it. But I think it's the human centricity that is the game changer.
So you have been with ISME since the start.
Yeah, I very humbly say that I conceived ISME with the team. So it was we were the founding team.
What were the struggles behind this, like where we are right now? How did it start? What struggles did you face back then?
We were doing something very radical then, right? So we came into a private space. Like most of you know, back then ISME were not offering degrees, but we were looking at skill building diploma. And for an Indian mindset, an Indian parent, it was a game changer and also very, very radical. So that took some time for us to establish ourselves in there. And at that point, the students used to do distance education, from another provider. And that used to be quite difficult for people to understand that, will this be, accepted? Will our students be taken in by leading universities or corporates and so on and so forth? So I think we had to prove ourselves more. And don't forget, like Dr. Shahani comes with a legacy, right,
Yes.
in her own right.
Yes.
And some of us just jumped over into that dream, and we believed in her. We believed in this vision, and even Siddharth, for that matter, who came back from London to set up something very, very unique in the education space for India. And the struggle was real, guys. It was really, really tough, long hours, a lot of hard work. But I'll tell you what, a lot of fun. It was great because you're creating something, right? I'm sure you feel this with your podcast as well, that it's your conception, it's your production, you're going to be putting it out there. So that feeling of belongingness and ownership
Yes.
that comes with it is so different. And that's exactly what some of us who were in the founding team have felt. And from there, from 2013, when we started ISDE, 2016, when we started ISME, to where we are today at 2024, it's like a 10, 11-year journey to finally get a status of being a university. Again, so, very, very different from the regular universities. In India, you're used to universities which have a lot of space and, here every square foot is premium. And we've created a vertical university which is world class. I hope
Yes.
you all feel proud about it as well. So that's where we are. So it's amazing to see that journey from small offices to a huge 200,000 square feet plus and counting campus.
How has Atlas grown so fast compared to other universities, at least based in Mumbai?
You want a personal answer?
Yes.
I think because our heart's in the right place. It's about delivering genuinely value-creating education and experiences for the students. So, that's where we are. And you should answer this, actually, or your colleague, your peers should answer this. I'm hoping we're doing something right,
Yes, you are.
right? And that's what makes all our schools a go-to destination today. So, yeah, maybe that's where it is. But I really feel because we have the heart in the right place.
You have been teaching since what year? 2002.
3.
So 20 plus years,
Yeah.
you must have had some student who has taught you something or that there's something worth mentioning.
All my students, every batch teach me something. And I really mean it. Whether it is, it's just the basics. So look, when we started out back then in the early 2000s, the Microsoft and all that was still coming about, right? MS Word and things like that. So we'd learn even basics like presentations, PPTs. You all do everything today in Canva. We have done it the hard way around, PPT and Word and, things like that. So those used to be experiences. Then using of technology was something very unique as well. And I think what I have definitely learned from my students is don't underrate them. Like there's a saying, right? That don't be the sage on the stage. And that very early on, I learned it in my teaching career. That nobody is here to come and listen to your lecture. They want to be engaged. They want to hear from you and learn from you in that manner. And learning becomes true when it's collaborative. So maybe the student has a perspective which may not fit into mine in that moment in the classroom, but doesn't mean I dismiss it. So you learn from them. I mean, there's so many times, especially when I'm teaching marketing and we're talking about consumer behavior or we're talking about, psychology and things like that. And it's a mindset, right? So I may think of it differently today, after so many years and in the different life space that I am. But you as a young adult may see things very differently as well. So you need to give them that space and respect. I think that's very important. So I think that's also where the Ma piece comes in, because you become a little more accepting, right? So, yeah.
Does it help to teach with industry experience?
Yeah, I think so. Again, you asked earlier about Dr. Shahani and how's the experience and all that. So very early, I was one of those who got the opportunity to get an internship at a leading private bank. So in HR those days, we used to have summer vacations, right? So May used to be our summer break. So teachers didn't come to college then. And I was heading the banking and insurance program at that point in time. Now, how do you teach banking and insurance without understanding what happens in the banking and insurance space? So, we had one of these corporate meetings with ma'am, and a leading banking firm offered that we'll be happy to take a faculty or two if they want to just, sit through it. What is now known as observership. We had done that in the summer of 2006 and 07. And that really did change. But of course, that was a short-term, stint that we got for a month or so. But I think, yes, industry-backed experience in the teaching space is very important. And I think that's also one of the reasons why at Atlas, we have so many visiting faculty who do come from industry background or corporate background. And that changes the perspective again from in the classroom.
So, what types of internships look good on a student's resume if a student wants to go abroad or somewhere?
I'll break this up. So, internships are very important. They're essential. I definitely, believe in that. It's first, of course, may start with your interests. So, if you're clear about what you like, maybe those are the areas you could. But most often than not, your peer group is not sure, and that's why you do internships. So I always feel that you should start something which is maybe a specific area if you want to, because so many times you'll say, I want to get into marketing and I'll do digital and so on and so forth. And then you do that one summer internship and you're like, okay, I don't really enjoy this. Or you've done BD and you realize that, I don't want to do business development. And that gives you perspective to move to your next space. So dabble in as many internship opportunities that there are. One thing that has not really changed, especially from a global perspective, is that the best international and even best Indian universities, whether it's the IIMs, or your ISBs, or even, of course, your Ivy League colleges, they definitely want to see a social impact project on your profile. And it has to be a dedicated, worked upon social impact project, not just, a couple of hours that you go for a couple of days or so. It has to be that 4 to 6 weeks impact-driven project that's very, very important too. So quick picks, do an industry internship, one summer or one break that you have. Definitely do a social impact project. If you're looking at entrepreneurship or, intrapreneurship or family-run businesses, then also dabble into that. I think the whole idea of doing doing an internship is that it brings the discipline. Correct? Imagine waking up doing it. Look at you guys, right? I mean, it's your break now. And you've been here waiting all morning to fix this and do this podcast. But you're so passionate about it, right? You brought in the discipline with it per se. So that's the difference that brings when you get into spaces like these.
What motivated you to do your PhD in CSR?
So again, over the years, I have worked with my students in many social impact projects. And sometimes, these are done as tick marks, right? And then very few companies, there are a handful of them who probably are doing it for the real impact of social responsibility or working with the communities. And that was a starting point. And then, of course, the Companies Act had a little bit of a change, and it came around with that CSR is an important aspect, and 2% of, has to be impacted towards it. So that is what really got me thinking that let's try and see, is it really measurable? Is it impactful? Or is it still lip service?
How was your program at Stanford? You went between 2015 August to...
we're taking So again, we had taken an immersion program there. Our first into the West Coast, and of course Stanford is everyone's dream, right? So it was fantastic. It's almost been 10 years now, and they'd woven a very beautiful program where you had classroom sessions, you had industry visits. And don't forget, 10 years back, the Silicon Valley was definitely booming. So it was amazing to go and see what's happening at Cisco or what's happening at Facebook. I remember the Google car, the driverless car was also there on the Google campus. And we were so excited about it because we'd only read about this. Also, we're talking about a time when we didn't have Instagram and so much access of information on the mobile phone then, right? So these were early, years in there. So it was wonderful to learn from there. And see, again, why do you do an immersion, whether Indian or international, is to change your mindset or get exposed to something which is different. While where we are is amazing, right? Because even at Atlas, you get so much experience. You have international faculty coming to your own campus, so that's great, correct? But when you go for maybe an Indian immersion also, so recently last year we had a Bangalore immersion, for example, you go there to understand what it is like to be in that workspace, to understand what it is like even to be culturally into that city. So that's why immersions become so important for you as a young learner to adapt to things also. And you're all global citizens. So you have to really be able to plug and play, as I call it, very easily.
Can we talk about the Ma part of the Minama? Like your actual children, like what have they taught you?
Lots. I have twins. So raising twins, and ask anyone who has twins, it's the lesson in patience, time management, joy, double trouble, everything that comes with it that you hear. I think my children are really, really my source of inspiration and strength. Every day that I walk into work, I, always walk in saying that I want to do something that the kids feel good about their mother, And I think that's where Yash, even being the mom in college, comes from there, that I just feel, I'm strict and, I'll tell you what's right and wrong and things like that. But It's coming from the vision of making you a better person, or at least contributing into that journey. I may not be able to do it fully, but at least I'm able to contribute, if at all, through my 2 bits in your journey. So my children are superbly. I think they feel proud, because their mama is a professor, and she goes to college. So that's something that they feel very proud about, and they're supportive in the journey. Okay, because I think it's very important you make them also be a part of what you're doing. That's something that I have used it as a parenting style, where I tell them what I do. In fact, so y'all say this, right? Spill the tea, right? That's what y'all talk about these days. So every evening, we have a spill the tea session where both my daughters and their dad is not part of it. And it's just the 3 of us, and we have to spill the tea. And what is the tea? It could be anything I have to share something about my day in my college. And they have to share something about their school, or their friends, or whatever there is. And it's that code that we don't take this anywhere else. It's just us, and it's just our talk that comes with it. So I think that's how they've kind of been a part of the whole thing. And they've got their choices. One wants to go to ISD, one wants to go to ISME. So I think, the future is quite set out here.
My generation of students, I believe, we like the term reasonable.
Yeah.
As long as if a teacher is strict, but if the teacher is reasonable, my generation will appreciate the teacher more. So being reasonable is a key aspect. And you have taught since more than 20 years. Do you have any tips for teachers how to be a better teacher, how to deliver better lectures in class?
I won't call them tips, but like you rightly said that. So earlier, Yash, every 5 years, the student characteristics would evolve.
Yeah.
Okay. So every 5 years, my batch would have some different set of characteristics, and that's how we teachers would adapt accordingly. Now what's happening is that each year the batch is different from the other. You will see it yourself. When your new juniors will come in July, you'll be like, oh my gosh, they're very different from what we are or what we used to be in our first year, So that's where it is. I think as educators, we need to understand one thing very clearly, that you don't necessarily have to know it all. What I mean is, sometimes, right, you may ask me a question and I may not know about it. Okay? But you're also a generation which has everything on Google, GPT, and everything in there. So I think the most, respectable and probably in your eyes admirable thing to do would be, hey, I don't know, I'll come back to you. Rather than, maybe reprimand you for asking me a question because obviously I didn't know the answer, or give you an answer which is totally off the thing what we're talking about or whatever it is. So I think you need to understand that they are no longer going to be listening to everything that you do. Even in my own parenting, right? I cannot tell my children, just do this. I have to break it down and explain to them why you should do this. And that's what happens with y'all as well. That why should you wear business formals to college every day has to be broken down and simplified for you. And that's where you'll all then have started wearing the formal dress code to college, right? So
yes,
that's where it is.
Talking about generation changing, I believe what you said is true, because my sister is 3 years younger to me, and I don't relate to her generation at all, being it socially or whether it be academics. So whatever you said, it's changing yearly. That's very true. Any life advice for students, if you would like to say?
I think enjoy the journey. That's something that I've definitely learned through as a student, as the different roles that we're playing as well. Enjoy the journey and trust the process. Sometimes, we don't have the answers. It's okay. You don't have to know all the answers. let things kind of evolve, let things kind of, take place, right? Like, give time. That's also important. Everything is not instant gratification, because that's what the world has come to today. So I think just enjoy the process, trust the process, and enjoy the journey. That's something that I can share, at least a life lesson from my point of view.
Thank you for doing this with us. It was a pleasure having you on.
Absolutely a pleasure. I know we've really waited for this one, but thank you. I genuinely enjoyed the entire experience as well. And more power to each one of you. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.